Hello and welcome to Rebel Meadows, your one-stop channel for all things RC and crafting. Today we're going to do just a short little video on connecting the JIYI P2, which is a full-featured flight controller. Comes pretty complete. It comes with its own power supply. It comes with a GPS and an optional OSD. Everything is ready to plug in. Like I said, it's a full-featured unit. However, the instructions from China can be sometimes, I found, lacking. So hopefully this will help those people that are using this product kind of put together. A lot of care has to be given on this because there are some places where the voltages could actually damage the unit, so you need to use some extra caution. Definitely that's why we're putting this video together. And there's a lot of different flavors, so make sure that when you're doing the instructions, make sure that you're looking at the right version. You'll see a close-up of this when we do the putting the cables in. And those of you that are familiar with my videos, you can see I've color-coded everywhere that you need to plug them in. Highly recommended before you actually put in any power. Make sure your cables are in the right place. Color-code them to make sure that if you unplug them and plug them back, you're going in the right place. This is going to save you a lot of heartache down the road. Like I said, you get an awful lot of bang for your buck with this controller because you basically get everything in the unit. You get the GPS, which is really helpful, making sure that you have your altitude hold, your return to home, and your loiter. The optional OSD can be added to the package. And if you're flying any of these, even if you're not flying FPV, it's good to have a screen available so you can actually find out what's going on. They have an awful lot of features in these little boxes, and it's hard on your radio to figure out what mode you're in. So let's take a closer look on plugging all these components together and then looking at a little bit of the software. We're not going to go into that in great detail, but we're going to look at the software to show that it does connect well. So let's get started. So let's get started with this short video on installing all the components on the JIYI P2. This is a full-featured flight controller. However, sometimes the instructions can be a little bit hazy around the installation. As I mentioned in the intro, you need to make sure that you connect everything properly because you can actually damage the unit or one of its components severely. So we're going to go one at a time, and you can notice that you can see my colored dots. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I kind of color code everything just to prevent me from doing anything nasty. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take our power module. Now the power module, it doesn't mention it much in the instructions, but the power module needs to be plugged in and a battery needs to be installed in order to get the LED to work properly. A lot of times people will plug this into their computer and the LED may or may not work depending on the voltage. So you will need to have the power and a battery on to make sure that your LED is working properly. So let's now connect up the power, and it is power to power, making sure you have the grounds to the bottom and the signal to the top. Now this is not a signal wire, so you have to be careful. If you install this incorrectly, you will blow out one of your other components. So just because it's white doesn't mean it's actually a signal wire. That's going to be for other features, but be careful. If you invert this or turn these upside down, you will do damage to your unit. It may be actually unusable if you do it, so be careful. The next thing after we plug in our handy dandy power unit, and I have my JST connection, I'm now going to plug in my OSD, not my OSD, my LED. OSD will come in a minute, and I'm going to plug in my LED right next to the my LED is this color. Okay, and this is the LED. This is the orange connector. Now this could change depending on when you buy the product and the exact version. And I'm going to plug in the USB. This is how we're going to connect it up to our PC to make sure everything is working okay. So now we have the power, and we now have this unit here. And I'm going to apply a bit of power onto it just to make sure everything is working okay. Making sure this is going on. So, okay, so now I have a light, I have power. I now know that I have connection between everything. I'm going to on connect it and continue on adding my components. The next thing I'm going to be adding is my receiver. And, excuse me, I'm just going to plug this in. And on my receiver, I am just going to be plugging in the one. It goes into the plug called RC. And I color coded that. Signal is to the top, black and ground. The ground rail is on the bottom, on both sides, but it's not necessarily ground like I mentioned before. It depends on what each of these pin configurations do. So I know on the M1 to M8, the bottom rail is ground, and over channel 1 to channel 8, I know the bottom is ground as well. On the others, I'm not quite sure, and I know some of them you can do damage if they're not plugged in correctly. So keeping in mind what I'm doing, I make sure my green dot matches my green dot, which is my RC. And you'll notice here that, I just have one cable. I am using my FRsky D8R XP, which is CPPM or PPM. So I just need the one cable, which is kind of nice and neat. Now, just to make this a complete demonstration, I'm now going to be plugging in my OSD. You almost need an OSD to find out what's going on with these fancy controllers. And I put my white on the top, I put my gray on the bottom, and I put my red in the middle. That's where the power is on this line. So my red goes right in the middle between the gray, if I can fit it in there. Between the gray, there we go. Good, we got that in. And now I'm just going to take the black cable here, the black cable from the OSD. I'm just going to move it on to any of the motor plugs on the bottom, which gives me my ground. Okay, and it doesn't matter which one you use, as long as it's on the bottom rail, that will give you, and I'm not on the bottom rail. I put that in the voltage rail, I would have done damage to my unit. Careful, careful, careful when you're doing this. Okay, I'm on the bottom rail, so I now know I'm on my ground. So that's how that's configured. These two wires on my OSD go to the camera. We ain't talking about them, so just ignore them. I am just going to be looking at the OSD connection, and you'll have to look at the manual. This is the voltage. There's two cables coming out, black and red for the voltage. And there's a white and a gray that are the TX and RX signals. The white goes to the top of where it says COM. The gray goes to the bottom of where it says COM. And the red power cable goes in between those two. And the black goes on the bottom motor rail, any one of those that are free. I don't know what you do if you have eight motors, because technically I'm not sure if that would work. But anyway, so that's the OSD. These two cables go to the motor. Ignore them. We're not going to talk about them today. So now I have this plugged in. I have my receiver plugged into RC, my OSD plugged into COM, white on top, gray on bottom, red in the middle, black on the bottom rail for ground, and the black and red over on my OSD unit for the voltage and ground. Okay, the black is ground, and then we have the TX and RX, the white and gray, going over to the unit. Finally, the one thing I want to install is my OSD, my GPS, and the GPS has two plugs, GPS 1 and GPS 2, and the white wire going up on GPS 1, that is the white, red, and black connector, goes on GPS 1, and the red connector with the yellow cable, yellow to the top, goes in on GPS 2. in. That goes on GPS too. Okay, so everything technically is now connected to my P2 here. I'm going to plug it in and make sure that my light goes on and all my things are working. And then we're going to connect it up to the PC so you get to see it, what happens when we actually connect it to the PC. So let's power this on. Give it a second. I got my red light on my GPS. I'm not going to get any signal here. I have my red light going on. I have my green light on my receiver because my radio is on and working. So we're connected up. And we have no information on our OSD. You'd have to actually find that out on the screen if you're actually going to get anything. So let's now take a look at the software and see how that works. Okay, I'm not going to do too much of a screen capture here as I normally do. I'm just going to show some of the basic information that we have on the unit. We can see that all my cables are working. I haven't done any adjustment on this because obviously this is my throttle, so I have to go in and do all my settings to make sure it's working properly. PPM is already set, GPS is connected. These are my modes from my switches. I don't know if they're connected. So I have some features that are just defaulted into the right position. I didn't do that on purpose, so that's basically just what I've done. One thing I will mention is when you do your calibration, it's better to do this before it's installed because you can move the controller onto its different sides to make sure it's calibrated properly. And basically that's it. Everything is working well, connected properly. It's not the most advanced software in the world, but it does the job. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this short little video on installing the P2 or wiring the P2. And if you did, please say like and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos of this kind. So thank you very much and have a great day.